Eli, Eli, Shelo Yigamer
Leolam, Hachol ve'hayam, Rishru shel hamayim, Tvilat hashamayim, Tvilat ha'adam, Hachol ve'hayam, Rishru shel hamayim, Berak hashamayim, Tvilat ha'adam. O Lord, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of man, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of man.
Years ago, the biographer of Winston Churchill was asked, what do you ascribe the greatness of Churchill? He said 50% intelligence, 50% integrity, 50% independence. And the person said, but that's 150%. The biographer said, but you didn't know Churchill. He was more than one person. I think all of you today are privileged to be here and to learn of someone who certainly, given her life, was more than one person. Now you can understand why in Hebrew, the word for life, chayim, is in the plural. You can't write life in the singular in the Hebrew language. Because if you want to live a meaningful life, you have to live it with intensity. You have to have that joie de vivre. And I think that's someone you remember today. So we have a saying in religious tradition that the eyes are composed of two parts, the light and the dark, but you only see out of the dark. So today on this dark day, you come here and I think you're going to hear about the light and the love of someone who is more than one person.
So Jeanne selected this poem for this occasion. She's always in charge. When at last I joined the democracy of dirt, a tussock earthed over and grass healed, I'll gladly conspire in my own diminishment. Let a pink peony bloom for my chest, and may it be visited by a charm of bees, who will then carry the talcum of pollen and nectar of clover to the grove where they hive. Let the honey they make be broken from its comb and released from its golden hold onto some animal tongue, my soul.
So we're all here today to celebrate Jeanne, and I'll try to explain some of the reasons why I celebrate her. And I'm her sister, and well, let's just start. This is Jeanne with a dolphin, as you can see, and this is one of her many thousand adventures. Can you all hear me okay? Oh, okay. A little louder. Now is that better? Okay. I'll scream. This is a microphone. All right, I'll talk to it, but I want to talk to you. But anyway, it's right there. Is that better now? Okay. So you're here, you've known Jeanne and many different people, and friend, and a relative, also an actress, journalist, film director, first director of the Moritz Binger Film Institute in Amsterdam. She was the Dutch cultural attaché in New York, and director of the Institut Néerlandais and cultural attaché in Paris, and much more than that. But she was also my littlest sister. And while she was very ill these last weeks, I asked her what I could bring her, and she said some family memorabilia, some pictures, some things. So I went looking through things, and I found in the attic an envelope of letters that my aunt had saved, my mother's sister, of letters that we had written to her when we were kids. And I found one that was my sister Norma had written, which I wanted to show you. I think it's priceless. So Norma was born in 1942, so this was her 7th birthday, and Aunt Charlotte, my mother's sister, and Uncle Phil had sent her an apron and a doll. So she had to write a thank you note. My mother was very big on thank you notes. And so, dear Aunt Charlotte and Uncle Phil, how are you all? I want to thank you for the pretty doll. She's misspelling these things, but they're pretty doll and apron. Gina's big now and cute, but she pulls hair now. Love, Norm. So, this is a picture of the family about the time that Norma was the hair puller. And Norma's I can't remember this clothing, so she's about 7 months, 8 months old. That's me, my father, and my mother. And I asked them, and I really did, how many more kids do you want? I mean, I thought Norma was enough. And they answered. And this is a verbatim answer. Dad said, as many as it takes to get a boy. And the next one was a boy. So that's Dan, you just heard from him. So the dad got what he wanted. And mother said, as many as it takes to get one with red hair, or to get one with a genius IQ, or a July 12th birthday. Now, or it could be all of these things are through 3 different people. One anyway, she wanted a redhead in the family. The red hair ran in the family. Grandma had red hair. Her sister had red hair. Genius IQ did not run in the family, but she thought it should. And then July 12th birthday. This was not because of Julius Caesar. It was because that was her birthday, my mother's birthday, and my grandmother's birthday too. And they wanted another July 12th. I was supposed to have been born on the 12th, but I didn't arrive till the 18th, so they had to try again. And sure enough, Jeanne was born on July 12th. And this is from the Lexington Herald Leader. It was so remarkable. 3 generations have the same birthday. Mrs. Abraham Wikler, wife of the neurophysiologist at the United States Public Health Service Hospital, I'll tell you more about that in a minute, gave birth Monday night at Good Samaritan Hospital to a daughter, Jean Carolyn. Notice the spelling. Jean changed it later when she understood that in French it should be N-E. So she was born with G-E-A-N. The child was born on Mrs. Wikler's birthday, which was the birthday of her maternal grandmother, Mrs. Max Fisher, Jamaica, Long Island, New York, who was shown with a mother and baby. So that's Grandma, we call her Grandma Fisher, and then my mother and little Jean. And I don't know how they knew, but they could tell right then because Mother said that that was it. That this baby born on July 12th had red hair, even though she just born that day, and was a genius. And they had a baby IQ test. I don't remember quite what it was, but they gave it to her and she passed. So she had a genius. So there she had everything. And so we were 4. And there was no need to have any more children because everybody had everything they wanted. So there's Jean, the little one there on the far end over there, and then Norma and Dan and me. Now, a trio celebrated their birthday July 12th every year. It was a family holiday. And that's Jean at age 2. And then this went on through the time. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about where she grew up, where Jean grew up, or at least her early years. She spent her first 6 years on this farm. And if you see this farm, it looks like a little strange, the color of the picture, a little odd. And I have cows, and then there's a big sort of thing in back. It looks something like a prison or something like a hospital. It was both. And this was a federal rehab center for drug addicts. And they were sent there by court order. So they weren't allowed to leave because they had to stay to get their treatment. So in that sense, it was prison, but they also were getting treatment and all various different kinds of treatments, occupational therapy and psychotherapy and whatever they had that they would work to try to help with addiction. And you see on the far side there, the image of what this was supposed to be from the Atlanta, Georgia, and this is 1936, the light of a new day. And you see all the people pouring into the hospital. These are victims of drug addiction pouring into the hospital. And that's the hospital that you see in the color picture there. And so this was a great hope. And Jeanne spent her first 6 years on the farm because we lived there. We lived on that farm and we lived there because our father worked there. And so that's a picture of him. He was a commissioned officer in the United States Public Health Service and they sent him there. And there it was, the title of the place was carved in stone, United States Narcotic Farm. That was the name of it. It was supposed to cure people of addiction to narcotics. But of course, in Lexington, people were joking and saying, how's the crops out there? And they changed the name. So, so it became just the United States Public Health Service Hospital and not Narcotic Farm, but it was always called Narco. So Jeanne grew up at Narco in the midst of all this. Just to pause for a moment, it was an ironic locale for a federal addiction treatment center. This is in Kentucky, in Lexington, Kentucky. And what is Lexington known for? Known for horse racing. It's known for whiskey. It's known for tobacco. But these are, they didn't notice that this was a little odd place for an addiction treatment center. But that's partly because they didn't understand that these were addictive things. The whole concept of addiction broadened and changed over time. So they really didn't mean to be funny when they did this, but it's funny now. And this is what the place looked like. So it's now the Federal Medical Center. It's no longer the narcotic farm, but you see the hospitals there, and then you can see up the upper. It's hard to. I'm not sure you can see what I see, but you see where the arrow, where the arrow is pointing up above the upper arrow. That's the residential section. So the doctors lived on the grounds, and the kids, we all grew up there, and had the run of the place, the cows and the pigs and the patients, and the facilities. It was actually a very unusual childhood for Jeanne and for me too, and for Norma and Dan. And the house at the top is the house that Jeanne lived in her first years. And down below you see the barns. And so that was out in the country, and that's where we lived. And Narcos patients worked the farm and made furniture and learned trades and skills. That was part of the therapy. And they babysat. And this is our favorite babysitter. His name was Joe Moore. And that's Joe with Jeanne. Jeanne was about 6 months old. And just quick Joe babysat her for years. He would get cured, send away. He'd get re-addicted, come back. Always became our babysitter again. And this was a wonderful part of our lives, although it was hard for him to be kept coming back. So the narcotic farm today is remembered for many things. And all of these played a part in Jeanne's life and her formation, the way that she began to view the world and so on. And one of them was great jazz. Some of the best jazz artists in the world were there, and as patients. And we heard some of the best jazz on weekends. And Jeanne was able to wander around, meet people like that, and to hear things like this. And this, I'm sure, this shaped her sensibilities, her artistic sensibilities, even though she was very, very small at the time. And this is the research center, where the doctors, my father in particular, but others were working to try to find the causes, understand the causes of addiction and the treatment for it. And they asked the question, why is this disease different from all other diseases? And they worked on that question for many, many, many years. And of course, we still have the problem. But the Addiction Research Center, where Dad worked, pioneered most of the treatments used today. But as you know, the problem isn't solved. We moved into Lexington when Jeanne was 6. So my parents decided it was too much commuting back and forth. The farm was 6 miles out of town, and we belonged to the Reformed Jewish temple in town. We also went to school in town, and that meant a lot of back and forth. And so they decided, let's just move in town. So Jeanne really grew up in Lexington after her first 6 years, and that's the house that we have there. And she got the best bedroom. And that was totally unfair, but it wasn't her fault, so I won't go into the reasons why that happened. But anyway, she had it all those years, and that was their home. And you were able to walk to school, weren't you, Dan? yeah, to high school and elementary school. And that was very nice instead of having to be taken in a government ambulance like I was to school. Really. So, so Jeanne grew up in Lexington and it became part of her life. But some family traditions continued. And that's one of the birthday pictures. And you can see already just from Jeanne's expression, she began to find and to go her own way. And that she did. And so I just want to add one more thing about this. Jeanne, add the NE to the name Jeanne. But later when we were in high school and early college, we decided, my sister Norma and I decided that our names all of them needed redoing, totally. Because we had friends named Charity, Felicity, and Simplicity, and things like that. We should have names like that ended with ITY. And so what are the right names for us? Norma and I gave it a lot of thought. Jeanne was too little to be involved with this. So we thought, what would it be? But we were going to name her too. So, oh no, this got wrong. All right, I was named, somehow my mind went away. What I was supposed to say, Marjorie, my name became Authority. Norma became Audacity. And Jeanne, we chose the right name, we chose Vanity. And she was furious. And this shows her genius IQ. Within 1 second, she said, hell no, I am not Vanity, I am Celebrity. And and Celebrity she remained. So I've been thinking about that these last days since we lost Jeanne. What does celebrity mean? She liked that, and we liked it too for her. Does it mean celebrated or celebrator? And I think it's both. And for Jeanne, it was both. She celebrated and she was celebrated. In this last year alone, and as many of you know, between cancer treatments, she joined Anya and Sasha on a trip to Morocco, Jeff and Anya and Sasha on a trip to Morocco, celebrated her 75th birthday with extended family, many friends here in New York, helped organize and attended a class reunion in Switzerland, and all that in between the treatments. So she said, no, I go this week, and next week I'm in the chemo, and next week back and forth. But she wanted to do these things. She did these things. They were all celebratory, and they were just very much Jeanne. And that's who we have lost. But I'd like to close with the words of a family hero, Joe Hill, the labor organizer, who said, don't mourn, organize. Jeanne would say, don't mourn, celebrate. And l'chaim. Thank you.
I did not bring a PowerPoint. So, as you see by your program, I'm Jessica Siegel. And I realize that this is not a typical color to wear to a memorial, but I'm wearing it in Jeannie's honor. Orange is one of her favorite colors. And it embodied who she was: vivacious, life-affirming, and vibrant. And it was who she was to the end. It's hard to believe that I've been friends with Jeannie for over 55 years. And what a remarkable, feisty, witty, giving, and courageous woman she was to the end, as everybody who's here knows. Jeannie and I first met in the late 1960s at the University of Chicago, U of C, the embodiment of the scholarly life of the mind. Jeff went there, Margie went there. It was not necessarily a good fit for either Jeannie or me. I had gone to a fairly mediocre New Jersey suburban high school. Jeannie was more worldly, having spent a year, as Margie said, at a Swiss boarding school as a break from her Kentucky Fried High School. And soon after we met, we connected and conspired to found, co-edit, and write for the Gray City Journal, a lively weekend magazine of arts and politics for the campus newspaper. We wrote, assigned articles, did layout, edited many overly indulgent, narcissistic college writers, and laughed a lot in the process. At the same time, Jeannie soon became a star in university theater, playing a revolving number of leading roles in everything from Shoemaker's Holiday to the Duchess of Malfi. Jeannie, with her friend Barbara Bernstein, wrote and performed in a modern version of a vaudeville show, the poster of which is in her bathroom. If any of you at the Shiva went to the bathroom. She was Meryl Streep before Meryl Streep at the University of Chicago. After graduation, Jeannie went off to Paris to attend the Marcel Marceau School of Mime, and I went to work at a left-wing anti-war news service. We saw each other occasionally, but then for a while we lost touch. She met Case, moved to Amsterdam, and had Jeff. It took a while for us to reconnect. That happened serendipitously through a friend of mine who knew Dan. And I remarked to her, my friend, that I had an old friend with the same last name as Dan. That's his sister, she said. And through my friend and Dan, we reconnected. By that time, Jeannie was working at Dutch TV, making documentaries focusing on women. Later, she came through New York on her way to cover Operation Rescue, the anti-abortion organization which blockaded abortion clinics. Her other films focused on women in the Caribbean and elsewhere. She had the same energy then that all of us have seen over and over again in many situations, which was even remarked upon in the last month or so by the hospice nurse. Jeannie and I visited back and forth, endlessly generous and welcoming. She hosted me and a whole slew of others in Amsterdam, as only Jeannie could during the millennium in 2000. She arranged for a boat to take all of us, Jeff, his friends, visiting relatives, and me, out to watch the fireworks from the water, and I still have photos. All of you know the rest of Jeannie's career arc, which Margie talked about, the Binger Institute, training young filmmakers from all over the globe, cultural attaché for the Dutch government, both in New York and in Paris. Later, she brought her deep-seated passion for the arts and cutting-edge artists her deep-seated passion for the arts and cutting-edge artists to the fore. Sometimes we laughed about some of them, though, I have to admit. She gave me a white porcelain dish that I admired after seeing it in her apartment, and it turned out to be encrusted with images of squiggly sperm. Jeannie and I shared an excitement and enthusiasm for the theater. Many summer mornings, we both got up at ungodly hours to make it to the line for Shakespeare in the Park by 6 a.m. when the park opened, hoping to score tickets, and we often did. Jeannie usually bought bagels and coffee, or we ordered by cell phone from the line. To me, it was an important part of the summer in New York City, but we also saw Drek. We somehow got tickets to a play that was part of the Psychiatric Theater Festival. It became a source of laughter for many years after that. Jeannie was my compadre in so many adventures, and when I met my husband, Mike, he was included as well. We stayed with her in her sumptuous apartment in Paris, and she gave us tours of her favorite neighborhoods. In New York City, we toasted the New Year and watched the fireworks over so many years from her wonderful balcony overlooking Central Park. She was endlessly generous, not just to me, but to everyone. And she always had a revolving number of visitors from Europe. Jeannie had so much excitement about living in New York, whether it was riding our bicycles up from Union Square with a mob of anti-car advocates to Central Park to watch the New Year's Eve fireworks, or joining me at a stoop sale in my Brooklyn neighborhood where we both tried to unload some of our stuff while dealing with the schnurrers who would try to argue down the price of items from $3 to $1 or even 50 cents. We had such fun, and I'm endlessly happy to know that I played a small role in bringing Truffle into her life. I drove her out to the cargo area of JFK Airport to pick up the puppy who became Truffle when she arrived from Arkansas. When I drove back, Truffle immediately sat herself down in Jeannie's lap in the back and began to snuggle. Many of you know that Jeannie was in a writing group in her last years, and some members of that group are here. All her insights, her creativity, her playing with language that she honed over time revealed itself in her stories about her life and the people that she has encountered and experiences she had. It was really for Sasha, excuse me, Jeff and Anya's daughter, and Jeannie's granddaughter that she that she was writing these stories down about her life. This is a quote from one of them. Of course, I want to live as long as possible for her parents, both of whom I love dearly. She wrote in a piece of writing entitled Memorial Day, which was written for the anniversary of her sister Norma's death. But they are grown now, fully formed, and don't need me in order to get on with their lives. It's Sasha I will go through all of this for, if I'm granted enough time and strength to be a real grandmother to her and to stock her soul with memories and impressions, and perhaps with some inspiration from my own life for her one day. She is also working on a retelling of her grandparents and her parents' lives, not for publication, but just for Sasha. As everyone knows, Jeanne fought her horrendous cancer to the end. She took on the beast for over 10 years with both determination and strength. And it goes without saying that it was with the help of her wonderful, marvelous son, Jeff, and his equally loving, supportive wife, Anya, that it helped her navigate everything she was hit with, and it created a home for her in those last months. Anyone who knew her that she reveled in Sasha, and Sasha's feeling was mutual for her Grammy. Well, all of us who knew and loved Jeanne know that she tried to carve out fulfilling life while engaged in this battle against cancer in what she referred to as the land of the sick. She traveled to Cyprus for a family wedding with Jeff, Anya, and Sasha, and with them, as Margie said, to Morocco as well, devouring and reveling in these experiences. Remarkably, but true to who she always was, she made meticulous arrangements to make it possible for her to bravely travel on her own to the reunion of her Swiss boarding school. Last July, she brought the same attention to detail in organizing, with Jeff and Anya's help, her 75th birthday, where people from all parts of her life met her and came together to honor her. Anya created a beautiful book out of the tributes, photos, and mementos that people contributed for her birthday. The last time Mike and I saw her at Jeff and Anya's farm in Strasbourg, we read through that book and looked at the photos. I'm so glad that through Caring Bridge, the Caring Bridge account that Jeff set up, that people from 2 continents and in 3 languages were able to send messages and wishes that she read and that Jeff read to her. It's hard to put into words all that Jeanne was: brilliant and gutsy, down to earth and brainy, vivaciously interested in both the arts and the world. She was a creative force, an outstanding mother and grandmother, and a great friend.
Well, I'm Jeff. I'm Jeanne's son, an only child, and I want to start by thanking everybody for coming. We have a wonderful audience here, and also a lot of people watching on the live Zoom, including many people from Europe who weren't able to come, but played an important part in her life. And so I want to thank them also for watching. Well, my mother and I, as many of you know, had a very close relationship. And so I wanted to describe to you some of the qualities that, in my view, defined her. You've heard a lot already. There'll be some repetition, but, I'll try to make my way through it. Well, she was fiercely independent, ambitious, and determined to have a career in the arts and in culture. And, you heard already that when she finished college in the United States, she moved to Paris for a number of years. And this was before my time, but I heard from people who met her then that she, she zipped around Paris on her little moped, lived in a tiny little apartment, but that didn't matter. She studied mime
with Marcel Marceau, a famous French mime, and then also with his teacher, and then studied sort of Chinese theater with a wonderful Chinese woman, Madame Tang, and had all these incredible experiences. Met wonderful friends, including some of whom are here. And then she met my father, who was a medical student in the Netherlands, and moved with him to Amsterdam. So this was, I guess, 1973, when she was about 25 years old. And, you know, before long, I mean, you know, you can imagine you're moving to a new country, you know, you could just sort of sit at home, do nothing, feel sorry for yourself, not knowing anybody. But that was absolutely not my mother. You know, before you knew it, she had mastered the language. She was producing television programs. She was making documentary films, making radio documentaries. Many of these were on women's issues, as Jessica already alluded to. You know, really was determined to make something out of this life and to have a career. You know, one example, which was also mentioned earlier, when I was 8 years old, she made the only sort of full-length documentary film that was actually shown in the theaters in the Netherlands. And it was called An Unwritten History, about the role of women in the, you know, in the male-dominated societies of the Caribbean islands of Curacao and Saint Martin. And you may ask, why those islands? Well, those are former colonies of the Netherlands. And so there's a lot of the historical link to those places. And she was very interested in, you know, women's rights and the role of women in society. And there in particular, you know, the women there were so strong and played a very important role in the family, yet in society at large, they had no power. They were completely invisible. And she really wanted to explore, why are these women putting up with that? You know, they're so strong, they're so fierce, and yet why are they allowing the men just to, you know, have complete control of public life? And so, you know, she made that, she did that film. I mean, it was her idea. She had a collaborator, but, you know, she was the director. She came up with, you know, what they were going to do. She took the film crew, you know, to these islands, spent weeks filming. She arranged for my aunt Monique to take care of me during those weeks. She, by the way, wrote me a postcard every single day describing, you know, some adventure she'd had. And she also allowed me to call her, which was not that easy to do back in the 1980s. And she was moving around a lot, but I was able to speak to her several times. But, you know, she did this, and she took this whole film crew, trekked through the jungle at times, you know, to visit a particular site or to interview a particular person that she thought would be relevant for the film. And, you know, and that was her. She had this incredible adventurous spirit. She was intrepid, fearless. You know, she was not immune to criticism. And I think sometimes criticism did hurt her, but she pretty much had the attitude of, I'm just going to do what I need to do. And, you know, I don't really care too much about what everybody else thinks about that. And that same, you know, that same adventurous spirit also benefited me tremendously, because we took many vacations together. You know, my parents separated when I was 2. And I actually had the benefit of double vacations, both with my mother and separately with my father, Case. And then they were all great, but with my mother, they were particularly adventurous. And one just to name one example of many is that we went on this trip through Turkey. I probably was around 10 or so. And we went on this trip through Turkey, and we started on the Mediterranean coast, beautiful part of Turkey where most tourists go. But after a week there, we got on the overnight bus and went on this bus trip through Turkey and traveled all the way east to the border with Syria, where most tourists don't go. And, you know, you feel like you're going into sort of biblical Middle Eastern territory there. And, you know, we had a lot of adventures. We slept on, you know, the open sky on flat rooftops. We, you know, there was this very nice vendor who had this beautiful silver thing on his back with shoulder straps out of which he poured fruit juice that you could buy. Of course, we weren't thinking, and those glasses are really dirty and you should not be drinking this stuff. but we drank it and we both got violently ill. And then we went to this mountain called Nemrut Dagi, Mount Nemrod, which is a king of in the Byzantine times, basically chopped off the top of the mountain, built a new top of the mountain that was a perfect cone shape so that you could recognize it from hundreds of miles away, and then had statues built of the gods with him in the center, of course. Anyway, a beautiful sight. And then when we left at sunset, and we saw a guy with a machine gun walking around. And then later, when we were traveling to Istanbul, we read in the paper that the next morning, a group of 15 German tourists had been kidnapped by Kurdistan guerrilla separatists who wanted to make a point for their independence, and they had kidnapped these 15 Germans who had camped overnight that night that we left, but they were camping there, and they were kidnapped the next morning. So but we laughed about it, and it really was one of the best trips that we ever took together. So I want to touch on a few other things of her career, because these really were very important to her, many of you know. So as was mentioned before, in 1995, she became the first director of what was called the Binger Film Institute in Amsterdam. And it was a new film institute, and the Dutch government had the goal to improve the quality and success of Dutch feature films. So this is not documentaries, but like fictional, movies, the way we see movies. And, Jeanne had never worked in feature film. She had made documentaries, but had never once been involved in making any film. But she saw the ad in the paper, and, she had what she called the vision and a power of imagination to know what this institute in her mind should become. She had a view of what the Dutch film world needed, and maybe not everyone agreed with that, but she had a view of what it needed and what this institute could become. And I think she really sold the selection committee on her vision, and this was sort of a theme throughout her life. And it was the best job that she ever had, and she said that to me many times. And I think what she said is that she really feels like she had the power, the combination of creativity and executive power. She combined the creative and the executive. And so she didn't just have creative ideas, but she knew how to implement them. And that really, she was really able to give those qualities let them soar and do all these things with this institute that she was now directing, and come up with crazy ideas and then making them happen. And that was really what she loved to do. So she created a place where professional screenwriters, directors, and producers would gather to work on a single project together. They would participate in workshops that were led by accomplished professionals from around the world. And she learned how to pitch, and she taught them how to pitch their project to big-time producers at the Cannes Film Festival. And this annual trip to the Cannes Film Festival was something very special for these young filmmakers who'd never been part of that. And she wanted the participants to feel inspired and to feel confident and believe they were part of this global community of filmmakers. And so, one thing she did was that when people finished the program, she gave each of them a large silver star, metal star, that was placed in the floor of the institute, like the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And it had their name and the year of graduation on there. And it was this elaborate graduation ceremony. And, giving this type of public praise to someone is not common in the Netherlands. It goes a little bit against the grain in that culture. And I know that it received some chuckles from Dutch participants and other people who heard about it, that this, American Jeanne Wikler was like doing this crazy over the top, Hollywood stuff. But, people, I think, who went through the program really appreciated her. And I got a wonderful message last week from a former board member of the Institute, who wrote that it was, and referring to the stars that were placed in the floor, that it was precisely that generous, un-Dutch approach that was missing in the Netherlands, especially when it was coupled with warmth and trust. And that is also who Jeanne was. You know, she really believed in the filmmakers who attended the Institute. She was like a maternal figure to a number of them, and helped them in whatever way she could to make them succeed. And Jeanne also displayed that warmth and generous spirit in many friendships that she cultivated throughout her life, and that I've also had the pleasure to, you know, to get to know and befriend, you know, over, well, in my whole lifetime. In the year 2000, she was still at the Binger, which she loved, but she could not pass up the opportunity to apply for a job that would send her to New York, where she wanted to live. And she applied to be the Dutch cultural attaché, or chief cultural diplomat to the Netherlands in New York. Now, mind you, she had only recently become a Dutch citizen. She was an American. The idea that she would become a diplomat in the Dutch, you know, diplomatic corps was a little bit odd, but, you know, she had the citizenship. And obviously, given her American background and also her experience in Paris, you know, she was a great fit for the job, and she got it. And as a cultural attaché, she hosted countless receptions at the beautiful brownstone, 3-story brownstone apartment that the Dutch government rented for her, and in which I also had the privilege of living while I was in law school. So I'm very grateful for that. But you know, it really played her strengths, because she loved making connections, and really her job was to connect Dutch artists and Dutch, you know, writers and people in the cultural world to, you know, American audiences, but mainly important people in the New York art world, and help them, you know, basically be able to be successful in the United States and get traction in the United States. And she was really great at that. And she would always have an anecdote or some story to tell when she was introducing two people about why they would like each other, or maybe why they already knew each other through someone else. And then when, you know, those people then became friends or acquaintances, she loved that. She loved making these personal connections. She also had the freedom to come up with all kinds of projects as a cultural attaché. And certainly one of the highlights was that in the summer of 2007, she arranged that the annual arts festival in the Berkshire Mountains have a Dutch focus. And so she worked together with all the institutions that are part of that, like Mass MoCA Museum and Tanglewood and Jacob's Pillow. And then they would work with leading artists from the Netherlands to offer Dutch visual arts, dance, music, theater, and film, as well as a lecture series. And I was living in New York at the time and had the privilege of actually joining her on one weekend during that summer and seeing some of these Dutch artists perform, and it was really terrific. And she was very proud of it. And as a Dutch diplomat and colleague wrote to me last week, Jeanne gave her entire heart and soul to the work in New York. And she really did do that. I want to say a few things about what Jeanne was like as a mother. You know, put simply, she was wonderful. She was loving, she was encouraging. She took a great interest in my life, but also really made sure that I was part of her life, as you've already picked up on. And although her career was very important to me, she always made sure that I was her top priority, and that I knew that. Combining motherhood with a career was not an easy thing to do, especially after my parents separated. And she was primarily responsible for raising me. Although I do want to say that my father continued to be very involved in my life, and we've always maintained a very strong relationship. And, you know, my mother also made sure that I spent a lot of time with my Dutch family, and she was always very grateful to them that they continued to keep her in the family and involve her in all, you know, all family gatherings and family events, even though she was no longer married to my father. My mother also encouraged me to strive for academic success, while at the same time giving me space and freedom to spend time with friends, play sports, and pursue other interests. While I was in high school, Jeanne took time in the evening to quiz me on Latin words that I had to memorize, and she took great interest in what I was learning in my classes. She also expressed her dissatisfaction when a less than excellent grade appeared on my report card. And, you know, especially in the Netherlands, little side note, grades are given on a scale of 1 through 10, and everything above the 6 and up is a passing grade. And an 8 is considered good. And in the Netherlands, that's high praise. Like, that good, you did well. That's an 8. But then if I brought an 8 home on my report card, it's like, well, why is it a 9 or a 10? You know, there's 2 other grades on the scale. Why weren't you getting those? So, you know, she didn't put too much, she didn't get upset. She didn't put too much pressure on me, but, you know, she just asked the question, which was enough to then kind of make me think maybe I should just work a little bit harder. And you know, that also helped me gain the credentials that got me accepted into the University of Chicago, which was both my mother and Margie's alma mater. I had a wonderful experience there, and it launched a life and a professional career for me in the United States. So I'll close by saying a few things about my mother in the later years of her life, some of which has been said already. After she held another cultural position for the Dutch government in Paris, Jeanne retired in 2013 and lived the remaining years of her life here in New York, which to her felt like her true home. She had actually not lived there before she became the cultural attaché, but she was meant to live here. And you know, the theater that Jessica mentioned and all the other things, you know, she really took full advantage of it. You know, she sang in a choir called the Cecilia Chorus. She visited the theater often with Jessica and other friends. She gave walking tours in Central Park. She lived across the street from Central Park, which she loved. And so she became involved with the Central Park Conservancy and gave walking tours there. She wrote a family history and a personal history. She traveled frequently. And in recent years, she volunteered at the museum at Eldridge Street, which is housed in a beautiful historic synagogue on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Jeanne was not someone to dwell on the past. I will say I did some interviews with her back in October about her life, but she didn't really dwell too much on the past. She always wanted to move forward. She wanted to keep busy and find ways to stimulate her creative and executive talents. After Jeanne had her first had breast cancer in 2014, she got her beloved dog. You just heard the story from Jessica, Truffle, who she loved walking and in Central Park. And I just want to also thank Marjorie for taking Truffle in. And, you know, I think at first was doing my mother a favor, but now we'll never part with Truffle. And is very grateful to have her in her family in Northampton, Massachusetts. Jeanne also got to celebrate my wedding to my lovely wife, Anya. And had a lifelong dream fulfilled when our daughter Sasha was born almost 3 years ago, and Jeanne became a grandmother. As Sasha's Grammy, as she wanted to be called, Jeanne was an enthusiastic playmate, a theatrical inventor of stories and songs, and a warm and lovely presence in our daughter's life. And you know, her biggest disappointment at the end of her life, as you've heard, was that she wouldn't be able to watch Sasha grow up and instill in her the many life lessons that she learned in her 75 years. The rest has really been said already, so I'm just going to skip over that. But, you know, let us all remember Jeanne for the, you know, wonderful personality that she had, the energy that she had, the interest that she took in other people, and, you know, her generous laugh and the sparkle in her eye. Thank you.
Thank you. I must confess to all of you, I feel somewhat guilty being a male rabbi, given her commitment to the advancement of women. But I want to redeem myself in your eyes because I oversee the New York Board of Rabbis. And so much of our leadership is comprised of female rabbis. So we believe that we all are part of one family. Secondly, when I walked into the room, I saw Bonnie Diamond, whom I've been privileged to know for some time, and she oversees the museum at Eldridge Street. And I have to say, over the years, many of us travel far distances to see so many of the great landmarks, some of the historic places, and we sometimes overlook some of the treasures that are right here in our own home. So Bonnie, thank you for all that you do for that museum at Eldred Street. And hopefully all of you will spend some time there. And then I know of her love for Central Park. So when you go there and you see all the trees, I want you to think of a blessing that says, may the branches be as strong as the roots. You're all the branches. And from what I heard today, you've been given some very strong roots in the time you spent together. I saw an inscription on a monument recently that I thought was very, very special. It said, the golden bowl is broken, but at least it was golden. So to all of you, I know it's customary to hear people say a person passed away. I always think that's the wrong phrase. Better to say, thank God she passed this way. Thank God you all had her in your life. We're going to say the Kaddish. Those of you familiar with it, please say together with me. You'll find it also on back on the other side, right? Would you all please rise? Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabo v'yalmod yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayachon v'yamechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael v'agalo v'zman koriv v'imru amen Yehei shmei rabba mevorach li'olam olmeil mayo yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudesho abrichu li'elo mikol berchoto v'shirota tushbechoto v'nechemoto gamiron bi'olma v'yimru amen Yehei shloma rabba min shemaya v'chayim olenu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom olenu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. The Lord our God establishes peace in the heavens, grant eternal peace unto the beloved Jeanne Wikler, peace unto her family and friends who are like family, peace unto humankind. Amen.
Hello, I'm Ruth, Jean's niece. I'm the other French-speaking theater artist turned international artistic bridge builder in the family. I feel immensely grateful for Jean's outsized role in my life and the life of my kids, and we're all here from the West Coast. Faced with her own mortality, Jeanne thought about what music she might like to have at her funeral, and her notes wrote that there are 3 songs that she felt particularly represent her and which she loved. And so I'm going to invite you to sing the first with me, and then we will, Jeff will explain the second, and then we'll hear the third also. Okay, so the French lyrics of the song with a rough translation so you can get the gist are included in your program. As you know, as we've heard, among the many amazing chapters in Jeanne's life, 2 were spent in Paris, first right after college when she went to study corporeal mime with Marcel Marceau and the founder of the form Etienne de Croo. And then again, when she returned as the Dutch cultural attaché, I think Jeff didn't mention she also did tap dancing in Paris as one of the things she did. This song is from composed in 1956 and made famous by Edith Piaf in 1960, so it may have been beloved by Jeanne dating back to her first Paris chapter, if not well before. So Julian, you want to hit the tunes? Well, please join me. I can't do it. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien.
c'est payé, balayé, oublié. Je me fous du passé. Avec mes souvenirs, j'ai allumé le feu. Mes chagrins, mes plaisirs, je n'ai plus besoin de balayer les amours avec le trémolo, balayer pour toujours, je répare à zéro. Non, rien de rien, non, je ne regrette rien, ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien, non, je ne regrette rien, car ma vie, car mes joies, aujourd'hui, ça commence avec toi.
And now Jeff for our very final number.
Right, well, now we're really gonna have some fun. So, as Jeanne would have wanted, done with the tears. So some of you may know, many of you may know that my mother had a great fondness for Greece. She visited there many times, had a lot of adventures there. I'll mention one that I was a part of. She at one point made a documentary film about sort of powerful women who advocated for women's rights. And I think she interviewed two people. She interviewed, I believe, Mrs. Gorbachev, the wife of the Russian president, the Soviet president at the time, chairman. But then also she interviewed Margarita Papandreou, who was the second wife of the then prime minister of Greece. And she was a real advocate for women's rights. And while she was the first lady, she really pushed for some advancements in Greek law for women. Anyway, on that one, my mother brought me along when she went to interview Mrs. Papandreou. And I remember I was quite young, I don't know, maybe 7 or something like that. But I remember that that while my mother interviewed her, she basically told her 2 bodyguards to take me out and just go have a good day and have some fun. And so these bodyguards took me in a car with sirens. I remember that. They drove to a swimming pool and they let me swim in the pool. I think it was a public pool, but these 2 bodyguards just stood by the edge of the pool, you know, these enormous guys with the arms folded like that, just making sure that, you know, no one touched me and that I was okay. This was just one of the many crazy adventures that I had with my mother. Anyway, you know, she wrote a letter to us, the family, with sort of her final wishes. And then she wrote at the very end, speaking about her memorial, she said, "If you wish, and if the occasion permits, I would like the guests to join in a circle dance to Zorba the Greek." And then she added, "It is all about living." So what we're going to do, for those who are able, and if you're not able or unwilling, that's fine, but we're going to play the song, and I'm going to ask Julian to start it. Then Ruth and Anya and I are going to just demonstrate the very, very simple dance, which really just involves crossing one leg over the other as you move sideways, okay? And then we'll invite you all. The song is about 4 minutes long, so we'll start, and then we invite you all to come and join. I don't know that a circle is really practical, so we could do more of like a line dance, perhaps. And the idea is you all hold each other's shoulders like that, and then, you know, you move to the side. So Julian, why don't you start it, because it's a long song, and it sort of goes faster as you go along. We're going to do this, and then Then after that, we'll all move straight to the reception, okay? All right, so.
Julie, now put on the next song.
Tea and cookies over there. So